Hi everyone, this is John Burness talking to you all. I am a musician, poetry educator, and sound poetry enthusiast. I don't like to call myself a poet. I think that's too vague, but that's not the point. So I, as a poetry educator, teaching the history of poetry part-time, and showing people alternative forms of poetry, I learned something of maybe paramount value that I could share with the world and anyone even remotely interested in poetry. So I am still in the process of these past few weeks learning a lot about Basil Bunting. I've only known of his existence and his oeuvre, his body of work, for about a month, and I have learned more from Basil Bunting, knowing him for a month, than I usually would in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. He's already completely changed my paradigm as to what poetry means and what being a poet means in just the month that I've known of his work. Now, there was an article that I'm going to pull up that I would like to, because I like to quote things verbatim, because I like to be absolutely spot on with my accuracy. It's right in front of me, actually, thank God. So this was an article on What the Hell is Art WordPress blog. Unfortunately, I can't find the author that wrote this particular article. But it has one sentence that I really want to echo to my audience here. Why is my Control F not working? There we go. Find distro. Okay, so I have this, it's a very small sentence. It's actually part of a larger sentence. But it's absolutely paramount to me, and I feel it's so congruent with my message of making poetry a genuine form of art in the West, because unfortunately it's been trashed on as a sissy form of art, an effeminate form of art, a not serious form of art, when world history has shown that that's absolutely not the case. And I go over that over and over again in most of my podcasts. So I'm going to read this sentence out loud because it's so congruent with my whole message and my motto of life. So, when Basil Bunting says that reading in silence is the source of half the misconceptions that have caused the public to distrust poetry, and that without the sound of recited poetry, the reader looks at the lines as he looks at prose. So I want to read that first part especially again. When Basil Bunting says that reading in silence is the source of half the misconceptions that have caused the public to distrust poetry. And as someone who has dedicated a lot of their time to sound poetry, which is another sub-form of poetry, and somebody interested in music as well, and finding all kinds of ways to combine the two. This is absolutely, this is almost groundbreaking for me, that poetry not read aloud or poetry not heard from audio is why people have not liked poetry, because it's actually highly incongruous. It's highly misleading that most of the world has learned about poetry by reading it, where most people that have fallen in love with poetry was from hearing people reading it. And this is why Ezra Pound is increasingly becoming an important poet in my life. Because every time I ask my friends, I ask smarter poets than me, I even ask, AI chatbots, I'm like, what is up my alley? What poet out there is up my alley? And people are always telling me Ezra Pound, but when I read him, I don't get it. I don't see the excitement that people are telling me that he has. And then I had one very smart friend recommend me that, or educate me that reading his poetry is actually not the point. It's listening to him. It's listening to him perform it, reciting it. They said he had like a prophet's ear, or he had like a sage's ear, something like that. But they said he was actually very talented at performing and reading his poems. And there's this, and the best place to find a collection of Ezra Pound reading it is at the University of Pennsylvania's website. They have a whole collection of audio of Ezra Pound performing his poetry. And from my experience listening to these myself, I see it's quite a huge difference, especially as a 23-year-old myself, being younger. I really don't fully understand the full historical context behind what he's written. So when I hear him perform it, it's totally different. Ezra Pound performing his poetry, to me, is, and I don't consider myself a synesthesiac in any way. I really don't believe I have any form of synesthesia, even though a lot of my friends and a lot of people that share my passions do have it. But to me, when I listen to his poems, it's almost like it's like the audio equivalent of a light candle in a dark room. And the candle lights up when he's talking, and when he's pausing in between his lines and his stanzas, it's a dark room again. That is really what it feels like to me when I hear him talk. And that makes a world of difference rather than just reading him on a page. So, and on a personal note, this sentiment of poetry, it's much more important to have poetry be read aloud to you rather than you reading it. It was actually true for my personal story. What really made me fall in love with poetry was actually hearing people performing it. I actually enjoyed it when I look at my early years. So I've been doing poetry since January of 2020, right before COVID. So about 6 years now. And now when I look back on it, it wasn't reading the poetry that got me so hooked. It was hearing other people saying that, and I feel I should pay homage to these people for kind of bringing me where I am today. There's this amazing YouTube channel called The Parable, run by Jeremy Ward, and I came across his YouTube channel when I started doing poetry, and when I hear him reading these poems by Bukowski, by Neruda, and Richard Brautigan, it brings a whole other life to it. It brings a seriousness, it brings a youthfulness to his poetry, to their poetry, sorry. So I found out that that's actually true for me as well. It's not even so much that it could be true for other people, but in retrospect, it has been true for me. And obviously, I've dedicated a large part of my life to poetry. And I still am so grateful that I get to immerse myself in it every day, in this craft that is both entertainment and education at the same time. That is both an enjoyable way of looking at the world and a brand new novel way of looking at the world in some cases. And that is a pretty groundbreaking discovery for me. And so I absolutely mean it when I say I've learned more from Basil Bunting in 1 month than I did from Vladimir Nabokov in 6 months. Because I love that he actually did tackle why people do not like poetry, not even why people do like it. And maybe that's a more important question that people in the poetry community should be asking, is not why do we like it, but why do so many people not like it? And I never would have expected of coming across a good answer that would also be so simple at the same time. And that turned out to be true. I will say the sentence one more time, and then I highly encourage you to go look at your favorite poems and just take whatever and for those that are new to poetry, if you've ever encountered a poem that you love, I just really encourage you to take whatever that one favorite poem of yours is and go on the internet and look at as many ways people have performed it as possible. And I guarantee you that will actually teach you what the poem is more than reading it. It's actually more educational as a music than as literature. And I never believed poetry was close to literature either. I believed it was closer to energy and a new approach to looking at life. But now I realize it's close to music. And there's one more aphorism I will tell you that I learned from Basil Bunting's CBC broadcast in 1980. And I love this phrase with all my heart, because it's music and poetry, the only two things people have told me that I'm good at, and I will tell it to you. So it goes, poetry starts to atrophy when it sways too far from music, and music starts to atrophy when it sways too far from dance. So it's an incredibly simplistic but not simpleton way of looking at the beauty of poetry. And I think that's all I have to say in this really wonderful discovery I made. And I hope this made you look at the world differently in any way, shape, or form. And I hope you have a beautiful day or night, as you can see, wherever you are. And me ka mahalo, that's Hawaiian for with gratitude. Thank you.